The house was already awake when Marian Caldwell opened her eyes. Not alive, not warm, just aware. Light pressed through the thin gap in the curtains, pale and undecided, as if even the morning hadn't made up its mind yet. Marian lay still, listening to the quiet arrange itself around her. The soft click of the heating system, a distant car door somewhere down the street, the faint, disciplined ticking of the clock she'd owned longer than her daughter had been alive. She did not reach for her phone. She already knew what day it was. Today was the party she had paid for, the engagement party. She sat up slowly, feet touching the cold floor, and waited for the familiar sensation of steadiness to return, the one she had learned to summon over decades of doing the right thing without applause. In the bathroom mirror, her reflection met her without judgment. 58, composed, unremarkable in a way that had once felt like safety. She brushed her hair with long, even strokes, the way her own mother had taught her. No rushing, no yanking. Control was a form of kindness, her mother used to say, especially toward yourself. Marian dressed carefully, not for celebration, for endurance. The navy dress hung where it always did, conservative, well cut, forgiving. Shoes chosen not for beauty but for standing. A bracelet she rarely wore anymore, slipped on at the last moment, more out of memory than intention. She paused in the doorway of her bedroom. The house felt too large for one person. It always had, ever since Evelyn moved out. Too many rooms holding the shape of old conversations. Too many corners where voices used to gather. In the kitchen, Marian poured coffee and forgot to drink it. Her gaze rested on the counter, on the neatness she maintained without thinking. She had once believed this order. Consistency. Reliability was what children noticed. What they absorbed. She was wrong. Outside, the garden looked ready. Not festive. Prepared. The hedges trimmed. The lawn even. Chairs stacked neatly by the side gate, waiting to be loaded later. Everything done quietly, without announcement. Marian stood at the window longer than necessary, a strange pressure settling behind her ribs. She told herself it was nerves. The venue sat by the river, all glass and pale wood, designed to look effortless and expensive, without admitting either. Marian arrived early, as she always did. Old habits, the kind that come from a lifetime of believing it's better to be useful than visible. Inside, staff moved efficiently, adjusting table placements, checking sound levels. Marian instinctively scanned the room, already noting small details that could go wrong. A crooked chair, a table too close to the walkway, glasses set near an edge. She stopped herself. "You're not running this," she reminded herself. "You're attending." The distinction felt unfamiliar. Guests began arriving slowly, trickling in with polite smiles and mild curiosity. Marian recognized some faces. Others greeted her warmly, but vaguely, like someone they'd been told was important without being told why. "Are you with the family?" one woman asked. Marian smiled. "Yes." The answer felt incomplete. When Evelyn arrived, the atmosphere shifted. Not loudly, but undeniably. She entered with confidence, sharpened by rehearsal, her posture straight, her smile calibrated, her presence instantly legible to everyone in the room. She looked beautiful. Marian registered that first, instinctively, the way mothers do. "Eliza," Marion began, stepping forward. Evelyn kissed her cheek quickly, already glancing past her. "You're early," she said. "Yes," Marian replied. "I thought." "Great," Evelyn said, cutting her off gently. "Can you help make sure the gift table stays organized? People get messy." "Help." The word landed softly, but it stayed. Marian nodded. Of course. She told herself this was temporary, that once things settled, Evelyn would circle back. That there would be a moment, even a small one, where her daughter would look at her properly. That moment never came. It happened in fragments. A guest handing Marian an empty glass without looking at her face. Another asking where the restrooms were, already turning away. A server thanking her for keeping things moving. Marian corrected no one. She smiled when spoken to. She moved when directed. She folded her discomfort into herself the way she always had. Then she heard Evelyn's voice. "Mom, no, not there." Marian froze. Her hand hovering near a tray she'd instinctively reached to straighten. "It's already arranged," Evelyn continued, smile fixed. "Just let the staff handle it." The word staff echoed. A nearby couple glanced between them, then back to their drinks. Marian withdrew her hand. "I was only trying to," she began. "I know," Evelyn said quickly. "You're helpful. Just stand back, okay?" Stand back. Marian felt heat creep into her face. She stepped away. The humiliation wasn't explosive. That was the problem. It was controlled, surgical, done in a way that allowed everyone else to pretend nothing uncomfortable had occurred. From that moment on, the room reclassified her. She became background. By the time a stranger mistook her outright for hired help holding out a plate and asking for refills, Marian understood something essential. This was not an accident. This was permission. That night, alone in her house, Marian replayed everything. She told herself she was tired, sensitive, reading into things that weren't meant the way they felt. She didn't mean it. She was under pressure. Weddings do this to people. Her phone buzzed once. A message from Evelyn. Everything went beautifully. "Thank you for helping today." Helping. Marian stared at the screen. She did not reply. Sleep came late and thin, broken by the sensation of being misplaced, not lost, but deliberately set aside. 2 days later, Marian received an invitation she hadn't expected. Lunch. Private, from someone she barely knew. And something in her chest told her that whatever waited on the other side of that invitation would remove the last illusion she had left. I stood in my own kitchen like a guest who'd forgotten the rules. The refrigerator hummed with the steady confidence of something that belonged to everyone except me. On the counter, a neat lineup of platters waited under cling film. Deviled eggs, shrimp on crushed ice, tiny pastries arranged like they'd been measured rather than placed. I had paid for most of it. I had planned all of it. And yet, every object looked as though it had been chosen to impress someone else. Evelyn's voice floated in from the dining room light, bright, effortless. My daughter had always spoken in 2 versions of herself, one for the world, one for the people she believed would never leave. For years, I'd told myself I didn't mind being the second version. I walked to the sink. The faucet shone, too polished, the kind of shine you get when a hand that is not yours wipes it down with purpose. My phone buzzed again. "On my way. You okay?" Jonah was my brother, my only consistent witness. He had a talent for arriving when something quiet was about to become loud. I didn't reply. Not yet. From the dining room came the scrape of a chair. Then Evelyn's laugh, warm, practiced, the sound of someone who had learned that laughter can be a weapon if you aim it correctly. It was the laugh she used when donors came by the house, when she wanted to appear harmless and adored. A soft footstep behind me made me turn. Mara stood in the doorway. She was Evelyn's best friend, or, in the way best friends become, her echo. Mara was pretty in a way that seemed almost accidental. She wore a pale slip dress and a cardigan that looked like it had been chosen to suggest innocence while doing the opposite. She looked at me with a small, apologetic smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Hey," she said softly, as if we were in a hospital corridor. "Hi," I answered. My voice sounded too controlled, the way it does when you're holding something down with both hands. Mara hesitated, then stepped inside. I wanted to check on you," she said. "It's a lot tonight." It took effort not to laugh. A lot. That's what people call it when they don't want to name what's actually happening. "I'm fine," I said. Mara's gaze drifted past me to the platters, the glasses, the trays. "Looks beautiful. You always make things feel special." There it was. The compliment that sounds like praise but is actually a conclusion. This is what you are for. I dried my hands on a towel that wasn't mine, or felt like it wasn't mine anymore. "Evelyn asked you to come in here?" I said. Mara blinked. "No. Just answer," I said, gentle enough that I could pretend it wasn't sharp. Mara's mouth parted, then closed. She looked down. A confession without words. She's under pressure, Mara said finally. She just wants tonight to go well. And for it to go well, I replied, I need to disappear into the background. Mara flinched, as though I'd spoken too plainly. It's not like that, she said, but she said it with the tone of someone who has already accepted that it is exactly like that. I watched her carefully. Mara wasn't cruel. That was the danger. Cruel people are easy to identify. It's the gentle ones, the ones who mean well, who build the world you can't escape. Tell me something, I said. Do you know why I'm being treated like hired help in my own house? Mara's eyes lifted, and for a fraction of a second, something like fear passed through her expression. Then she smoothed it away. What do you mean? She asked, too quickly. I stepped closer, not aggressively, just enough to narrow the space between us. Mara, I said, quiet, if there's a conversation happening about me, I want to know what it is. Her throat bobbed. She glanced toward the hallway, as if worried someone might hear. There's nothing, she whispered. But the whisper was the confirmation. I held her gaze until she couldn't hold mine back. Then Mara did something small and devastating. She reached into her clutch, pulled out her phone, and turned the screen toward me, only for a second. A group message. Dozens of names. At the top, the title, Evelyn Party, Run of Show. The most recent message, right before Mara snatched the screen back, read, If she starts acting weird, just redirect her. Don't let her ruin this. She, not my mother. Not Mom. Just she, like an inconvenience. Mara's lips trembled. I'm sorry, she said. I shouldn't have shown you that. No, I replied, my voice steady in a way that didn't match how my stomach felt. You shouldn't have been in it. Mara looked as if she might cry. It would have been easier if she did. Tears are proof of a conscience. But her face stayed dry. And that told me something else. This wasn't just thoughtless. This was organized. I turned away, because if I kept looking at Mara, I might say something that would change the night permanently. And a part of me, the part that had survived being dismissed for years, did not want to change the night. It wanted to understand it first. By 6:30, the house was full of perfume and voices that belonged to people who didn't know the floor plan, but walked like they did. The living room filled with men in tailored jackets and women with practiced posture. Laughter rose and fell in polite waves. I moved through it carrying a tray, and it was surreal how quickly people accepted the role I'd been assigned. They smiled at me the way you smile at staff. They did not ask my name. They did not ask why my eyes looked too sharp. Evelyn stood near the fireplace, radiant in a navy dress that made her look older than her 24 years in the exact way she wanted. Her hair was pinned with precision. She held a glass of champagne like it was a prop, something that belonged to her because she had decided it did. Beside her stood Lionel Hart. Lionel was a family friend. That was the polite label. The truth was more complicated. He was Evelyn's mentor in the nonprofit world, her bridge to donors, her soft entry into rooms that typically didn't open for young women without last names. That mattered. Lionel had that kind of power, quiet, social, disguised as generosity. He saw me, and his smile shifted into something warm. Margot, he said, stepping toward me as if we were equals. You look lovely. Margot. The sound of my name in a room where people had been calling me ma'am, without meaning, it nearly made me lose my composure. Thank you, I said. Lionel's gaze flicked over the tray in my hands, and a subtle confusion crossed his expression. Then it cleared. He understood what was happening, and he chose, immediately, not to interrupt it. Big night for Evelyn, he said. Yes, I replied. His eyes lingered on mine. You're handling things. It wasn't a question. It was an assessment. I always do, I said. Lionel's mouth tightened slightly, as though he'd tasted something bitter. Then he leaned in, just enough that I could smell his cologne, expensive, understated. "Careful tonight," he murmured. My fingers tightened around the tray. "Careful of what?" I asked. Lionel's smile returned, polite, public. "Of emotions," he said. "They're contagious." Then he stepped away as if he'd said nothing at all. I stood still for a moment, letting that sink in. Careful of emotions. It sounded like advice. It felt like a warning. Across the room, Evelyn laughed too loud, too bright, and slipped her arm through the elbow of a tall man I didn't recognize. He was handsome in a clean, professional way. Mid-30s, athletic build, the kind of face you'd trust because it looked like it had never needed to lie. Evelyn tilted her head toward him and said something that made him smile. Then she glanced in my direction. Her gaze landed on me like a hand pressing down. Not anger, not love, control. And in that moment, I understood something I hadn't wanted to admit. This wasn't a mistake. This was the plan. Jonah arrived at 7. He walked in like someone who didn't care who owned the air. He wore a simple dark sweater. No tie, no performance. His hair was damp from the rain, and he smelled faintly of cold wind and cigarettes he pretended he didn't smoke. His eyes found me immediately. Not because I was loud, because Jonah had always looked for the version of me that other people overlooked. He came toward me, slipping through the crowd, nodding at strangers without letting them slow him down. When he reached me, his gaze dropped to the tray, then back to my face. "What's going on?" he said, not as a question, but as an accusation directed at the room. I swallowed. "It's fine." Jonah's expression didn't change. He just leaned closer. "Margot," he said quietly, "you're holding a tray like you work here." "I'm helping," I said. Jonah's eyes narrowed. "You're hosting." I didn't answer. Jonah took the tray from my hands without asking and set it down on a side table like he was removing a burden from a body. Then he stepped in front of me, shielding me slightly from the crowd. "What happened?" he asked again, softer now. I tried to speak. I did. But what came out was the truth I'd been keeping from myself. "She's embarrassed of me," I said. Jonah's jaw tightened. "Who told you that?" "No one," I said. "That's the point. They don't have to." Jonah glanced around the room, his gaze sharp as a blade. He took in Evelyn near the fireplace, Lionel hovering nearby, Mara lingering like a shadow. He watched the way people's eyes slid over me. Then he looked back at me, and his voice dropped even lower. "Is Lionel involved?" he asked. The question startled me. "Why would you think that?" I asked. Jonah's mouth twisted. "Because Lionel Hart doesn't show up to parties. He hosts them. Or he controls them." I felt my skin prickle. Jonah reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. He tapped a few times, then showed me a screen. A photo. A headline. My stomach lurched before my mind caught up. It was a local business article, old, maybe 2 years. The photo showed Evelyn standing at a charity luncheon beside Lionel, both smiling. The caption read, "Hart Foundation announces new initiative with emerging director Evelyn Vale." Vale? My daughter's last name. Not mine. Not Jonah's. Not the man who raised her, who had been gone for years but still existed in the story like a ghost. Jonah watched my face carefully. "You noticed that?" he asked. It's just a name," I said. But my voice was thin. Jonah shook his head. "No, it's a decision." I stared at the screen. Evelyn had been using Vale quietly, strategically, as if my name was something she could shed whenever it suited her. I remembered her as a teenager insisting she couldn't wait to make a name for herself. I hadn't realized she meant a different one. Jonah pocketed his phone and looked at me with the kind of concern that feels like protection. "Talk to me," he said. "What's the real thing?" Before I could answer, a voice cut through the air. "Yona. Evelyn." She walked toward us with that same bright smile, her eyes glittering, her posture flawless. "Your timing is perfect," she said, touching Jonah's arm as if they were close. "Come meet everyone." Jonah didn't move. He looked at Evelyn the way you look at someone holding a knife behind their back. "I'm looking at everyone," Jonah said. I'm more interested in why my sister is being treated like staff in her own home. Evelyn's smile didn't crack, but her eyes did something subtle. They sharpened. Don't do this, she murmured. Still smiling, still public. Jonah's voice was calm. Don't do what? Evelyn's fingers tightened on Jonah's arm. Make a scene. Jonah glanced at the room. A scene? You mean the one you've already staged? Evelyn's smile held for another breath. Then she released Jonah's arm and turned her gaze to me. Mom, she said, sweet as sugar poured over something rotten. Are you okay? It was a performance for the room. The question wasn't meant for me. It was meant for them. And the worst part was, everyone watched pretending not to. I felt heat rise in my chest, but I forced my voice to stay level. I'm fine, I said. Evelyn's eyes softened theatrically. Good, because I need you to do something for me. Jonah's head turned slightly. No. Evelyn ignored him. She leaned closer, lowering her voice so only I could hear. The caterer is behind, she whispered. Can you check the back and see if the extra chairs came? And Mom, please, don't be difficult tonight. Her words were quiet, but they landed like a slap. Don't be difficult, as if my dignity was an inconvenience. I stared at my daughter, this polished stranger wearing my child's face, and something in me shifted. Not rage, not sorrow. Recognition? I understood that whatever had been building in secret had now arrived. I looked at Evelyn and said, calmly, no. The word was small, but it stunned her more than shouting would have. Evelyn blinked. Her smile faltered, just a flicker, then returned brighter, sharper. Excuse me? She whispered. I said no, I repeated. I'm not doing that. A silence spread between us. Not loud, not dramatic, but the kind of silence that makes a room feel colder. Evelyn's gaze hardened. You're embarrassing me, she said softly. The sweetness gone now. Jonah stepped forward. You're embarrassing yourself. Evelyn's eyes flashed. Stay out of this. Jonah didn't flinch. Not a chance. Evelyn turned her eyes back to me, and in that moment, her expression slipped just enough for me to see what lived under the performance. Not just entitlement. Fear. A controlled kind of fear. Like someone trying to keep a door closed against something that's pushing from the other side. She leaned in again, so close I could feel her breath. You owe me, she whispered. The words hit me in the center of my chest. Owe you? I echoed. Evelyn's eyes didn't blink. After everything I've done, after everything I've built, you owe me to not ruin this. I stared at her, and I realized she believed it. She believed the life she had built had nothing to do with the foundation I'd poured under her. She believed she was the architect and I was the inconvenience. Jonah watched me, waiting. The room waited too, and I understood something else. This wasn't just a party. This was a test, to see whether I would stay in my assigned place, to see whether I still knew how to disappear. I took a slow breath and said evenly, if my presence ruins it, Evelyn, then it wasn't stable to begin with. Her eyes widened, just slightly. Then she smiled cold now, controlled. Fine, she said. Be that way. She stepped back, lifted her voice, and turned the performance back on like a light. Oh, she laughed, loud enough for nearby guests to hear. Mom's just tired. She's been so helpful all day. Helpful. The word was a leash disguised as praise. A few guests chuckled politely, as if they understood the joke, as if I had been reduced to something harmless. Evelyn touched my shoulder, gentle, affectionate for the room, and whispered one last thing as she turned away. You'll regret this, she said. Then she walked back into her circle of admiration, her posture perfect again. Jonah leaned close. What does she mean? He asked. I shook my head, but my stomach had started to drop as if my body already knew what my mind was refusing to see. I don't know, I said, but I did. Not the details. Not yet. But the shape of it. Evelyn had been building something behind my back. And tonight, She planned to show me exactly where I stood inside it. I went upstairs because my hands needed something to do that wasn't shaking. The hallway upstairs was darker, quieter. The party noise softened into a distant murmur, like the house itself was trying to keep secrets from the guests. I walked to my bedroom. The door was slightly ajar. I pushed it open. The room looked normal at first glance. Bed made, lamps aligned, curtains drawn to the same neat line. Then I noticed the jewelry box. It sat on my dresser where it always did, a small wooden thing my mother had given me decades ago. I hadn't opened it in months. It held old pieces, sentimental, not valuable. Tonight, it was turned slightly, as if someone had moved it and tried to put it back exactly right. I stepped closer and opened it. Empty. Not completely. A few cheap earrings remained, the ones I never wore. But the ring was gone. My wedding ring. Not the one my husband had given me, the marriage was long over, but the one I kept anyway, because it was proof that my life had once been mine, not just service to someone else. My chest tightened. I stood very still, listening. No one upstairs, no footsteps, but the absence in that box felt loud. I closed it carefully. Then I noticed something else. My filing cabinet in the corner. The bottom drawer was slightly open. I hadn't touched it in weeks. I pulled it open. Folders. Documents. The story of my life in paper mortgage records, insurance policies, Evelyn's childhood medical records, old bank statements, and in the front, placed like it wanted to be found. A thin manila envelope. No label. I lifted it. Inside were photocopies. Not originals. Photocopies of my signature. Photocopies of documents with my name. My stomach went cold. I flipped through them, my fingers suddenly clumsy. A line of credit application. A transfer authorization. A beneficiary change form. All bearing my name. All bearing a signature that looked like mine, too close. But something about it was wrong. Too smooth. Too deliberate. A perfect imitation. I stared at the papers until the room blurred slightly. Downstairs, Evelyn laughed. The sound drifted up the staircase like a reminder. This is still happening. This is still your reality. I heard a soft click behind me. I turned. The bedroom door had moved. Not fully closed, but adjusted, as if someone had nudged it. My heart jumped. Hello? I called, my voice low. No answer. But the air in the hallway felt aware. I stepped to the door, pulled it open. The hallway was empty. At the far end, Evelyn's old bedroom door was closed. I stared at it. For years, that room had been untouched, preserved like a shrine to the daughter who had outgrown it. Evelyn didn't sleep there anymore. She had an apartment now, downtown, stylish, curated. But tonight, the door looked different. Not closed gently, closed firmly. I walked toward it. Slow. Something in me already knew this would be a threshold. I reached the door and tried the knob. Locked. Evelyn's old bedroom had never been locked. Not once. Not even when she was 16 and furious with the world. I stood there with my hand on the knob, feeling my pulse in my fingertips. Locked doors inside your own house do something to your mind. They create a separation you can't ignore. They suggest a private world inside your life that you're no longer allowed to enter. I stepped back. I could force it. I could break the lock. But the party was downstairs. Hundreds of eyes waiting for me to behave. And Evelyn had said, "You'll regret this." I stared at the locked door and understood something quietly terrible. Whatever was behind it, she had planned for me to find it. Or she had planned for me to try and fail. Either way, it was part of the design. My phone buzzed. A text. Unknown number. Just one line. Check the trust documents. Before midnight. My throat went dry. I read it again. Then again. Trust documents. My mind scrambled, trying to find the file, the memory, the place. And then it hit me like a delayed bruise. The family trust, set up years ago after my father died. A modest thing, meant to ensure Evelyn had a safety net and Jonah wouldn't have to carry the burden alone. I hadn't looked at it in a long time because, why would I? It was family. It was secure. It was safe. I stared at the message until my fingers started to tremble. Then I did the only thing I could do without collapsing. I took a breath. I tucked the envelope back into the cabinet, not because I wanted to hide it, but because I didn't want anyone to know I'd found it yet. And I walked back downstairs with my face arranged into something that could pass for calm, because the party was still going. And somewhere inside it, my daughter was smiling like nothing was wrong. I went back downstairs, wearing the face I had perfected over years of professional dinners and family obligations, the one that says I am present while hiding the fact that something inside me is counting exits. Evelyn was in the center of the living room now, glass raised, voice lifted just enough to gather attention without demanding it. She had always known how to speak, so people leaned in. I stood near the doorway, listening. "So grateful," she was saying, "to everyone who helped make tonight possible." A ripple of approving murmurs moved through the room. My stomach tightened. Evelyn's eyes found mine, just for a second, long enough for something unspoken to pass between us. "Especially," she continued smoothly, "to the people who worked tirelessly behind the scenes." A few people laughed politely. Someone clapped once, unsure, then stopped. Evelyn's gaze did not leave me. I felt Jonah shift beside me. His hand brushed my elbow, a question, a warning, an offer. I shook my head slightly. This was her stage. Interrupting her would only confirm whatever story she wanted to tell about me. Evelyn smiled wider. "And of course," she added, "to my family who taught me independence, even when it wasn't easy." The phrasing was surgical. Not supported me. Not believed in me. Independence. It sounded generous. It sounded admirable. It erased me completely. Applause followed, measured, tasteful. Evelyn dipped her head, gracious, already accepting congratulations. Jonah leaned close. "She's baiting you," he murmured. "I know," I said. The applause faded. Music resumed. The room relaxed again, satisfied it had witnessed something appropriate. That was when Lionel Hart moved. He approached me with the calm certainty of someone who knew the architecture of power and believed himself immune to its collapse. "Margot," he said warmly, "may I?" He gestured toward the quieter end of the room, near the French doors. I followed, because refusing would have drawn attention, and because some part of me needed to know what he was about to say. The river outside reflected the lights from inside, fractured and unsteady. Lionel folded his hands loosely, as if we were about to discuss weather. "You handled tonight with grace," he said. I waited. "Not everyone could," he added, "given transitions." "What transitions?" I asked. Lionel smiled. "Children growing up, parents stepping back." "There's a difference," I said evenly, "between stepping back and being pushed aside." His smile thinned. "You're reading conflict where there is evolution." I looked at him, then really looked. At the way his kindness never quite reached his eyes. At the way he spoke, as if his words were already endorsed by the room. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. Lionel sighed softly, as though I had tired him. "Because I care about Evelyn's future." "And I don't?" I asked. "That's not what I meant," he said quickly. "But sometimes support can become counterproductive. Optics matter." Optics. The word slid into place beside cover, beside independence, beside helpful. "You mean my presence complicates her story?" I said. Lionel did not deny it. "She's worked very hard," he said, "to establish herself as self-made. It resonates with donors, with boards." "By erasing me," I said. "By simplifying," Lionel corrected. "Narratives need clarity." I felt something steady inside me go cold. "You're asking me to disappear," I said. Lionel held my gaze. "I'm asking you not to interfere." The difference was insulting. I stepped back slightly. "Interfere with what?" Lionel hesitated. "The first crack." "With momentum," he said finally. I nodded once. I see. Lionel's voice softened. You should be proud of her. I am, I said. That doesn't make me disposable. Lionel looked past me, scanning the room, checking who might be listening. Then he leaned in. Be careful tonight, he said again. Missteps have consequences. I met his eyes. So does manipulation. His expression cooled. Good evening, Margot. He walked away. I stood there for a moment, the weight of his words pressing in. Then I felt it. The absence. The quiet, instinctive awareness that something was no longer where it should be. My handbag. I turned, scanning the room. I had left it behind the decorative screen near the back where I had been told it would be out of the way. I walked there quickly. The bag was gone. Not knocked over. Not shifted. Gone. My pulse spiked. I forced myself not to react visibly. Panic, I had learned, was something people like Evelyn could weaponize. I moved through the room calmly, checking under tables, behind chairs, smiling apologetically as I did. A performance layered over urgency. Nothing. I went to the kitchen, the coat closet, the hallway. Still nothing. Jonah noticed my face. What is it? He asked. My bag, I said quietly. It's missing. His jaw tightened. Who had access? Everyone, I said, but someone moved it deliberately. Jonah's eyes flicked toward Evelyn. She was laughing with a group near the bar, radiant, unbothered. Stay here, Jonah said. He moved off before I could stop him. I stood alone, the room suddenly too loud. Inside that bag were my keys, my wallet, my phone charger, and something else. The envelope I had slipped inside earlier without thinking because I hadn't wanted to leave it upstairs. The photocopies, my signature, the proof that something was wrong. A cold realization spread through me. If the bag was gone, so was my leverage. I turned slowly, scanning the room again. And that's when I saw Mara. She stood near the staircase, eyes fixed on me, not apologetic this time. Uneasy. I walked toward her. Mara, I said softly, have you seen my bag? She swallowed. Evelyn asked me to move it. She said it was cluttering the space. Where? I asked. Mara hesitated. Then upstairs. Which room? Mara's eyes flicked away. The office. The office. A room Evelyn rarely entered. A room that held documents. I didn't wait. I went upstairs. The music dulled behind me as I climbed. The house felt different now, like it was watching. The office door was open. My bag sat on the desk. Open. I crossed the room quickly and looked inside. The envelope was gone. I stood there, breathing shallowly, the edges of my vision blurring. Behind me, a voice spoke. I told you not to be difficult. I turned. Evelyn stood in the doorway. Her face was calm. Too calm. Where is it? I asked. She tilted her head. Where's what? The envelope, I said. From my bag. Evelyn smiled faintly. You really are tired. My hands curled into fists. Don't. She stepped inside and closed the door behind her. The click of the latch sounded final. I was going to give it back, she said. After tonight. Give back what you stole, I said. Her eyes hardened. You're not thinking clearly. Where is it? I repeated. Evelyn sighed. I'm protecting you. I laughed once, sharp. From what? From making a mess you can't clean up, she said. From embarrassing yourself. From embarrassing me. There it was. The truth. Finally unwrapped. You went through my things, I said. You left them lying around, she replied coolly. Just like you always do, assuming no one will touch what's yours. I stared at her, this woman wearing my daughter's face, and felt something inside me fracture cleanly. You took my ring too, I said. Her eyes flickered, involuntarily. So she had. I needed collateral, she said softly. The word struck like a blow. Collateral, I repeated. You're spiraling, Evelyn said. I'm containing the damage. You're stealing from me, I said. I'm managing risk, she replied. Mine. And yours. The audacity of it left me breathless. You humiliated me downstairs, I said. And now you're robbing me. Evelyn's voice sharpened. You humiliated yourself by refusing to know your place. My chest tightened painfully. My place, I echoed. Yes, she said. In my life. In my future. And where is that? I asked. Her gaze did not waver. Behind me. The silence between us was absolute. Then I said the thing I hadn't planned to say. I'm not afraid of you. Evelyn's smile returned, but it was different now. Edgeless. Empty. You should be, she said. I stepped closer. You've built something on my back, and you're scared I'll expose it. She laughed softly. Expose what? You don't even know what you're holding. I know enough, I said. Evelyn leaned in, her voice a whisper. No, Mom, you don't. She reached into the pocket of her dress and pulled out a folded sheet of paper. The envelope. She tapped it lightly against my chest. This, she said, belongs to me now. She turned and opened the door. Smile, she added over her shoulder. People are watching. She walked out. The door remained open. I stood alone in the office, the weight of what had just happened pressing in. Downstairs, laughter swelled again. The party continued, but something essential had ended. The illusion of safety. I realized then, standing in my own house, robbed quietly by my own child, that whatever came next would not be resolved by patience or silence. This was no longer about feelings. It was about survival. And for the first time in my life, I understood that love, without boundaries, becomes permission. The house did not look like a crime scene the next morning. That was the first cruelty. Sunlight came in cleanly through the kitchen windows, settling on the counters without judgment. The smell of coffee, fresh, deliberate, filled the space, as if someone had decided the day should begin properly, regardless of what had been taken during the night. Marian stood barefoot at the sink, staring at the reflection in the glass. Her face looked unchanged. That, too, felt wrong. She half expected to see something obvious, redness, strain, a visible crack, but the woman looking back at her appeared composed, capable, intact. It was unsettling how well damage could hide. Behind her, the house moved. A cupboard opened. A mug was set down. A chair scraped gently against the floor. Evelyn. Marian didn't turn around. Morning, Evelyn said, lightly. Too lightly. Marian reached for the kettle and filled it with water. Her hands were steady. That surprised her. I made coffee, Evelyn added. You didn't come back down last night. I thought you'd gone to bed early. Marian placed the kettle back on its base and turned, finally, to face her daughter. Where is my ring? She asked. The question landed without drama. Evelyn froze, not completely, just enough for the smallest miscalculation to show. What ring? She asked. My wedding ring, Marian replied. The one you took. Evelyn frowned, the expression practiced. I didn't take anything. Marian nodded slowly. Then it should be easy to give it back. Silence. The kettle clicked on. Evelyn exhaled, as if indulging a child. You're tired. Last night was a lot. You stole from me, Marian said. Evelyn's voice cooled. You're accusing me of something serious. So was what you did, Marian replied. Evelyn folded her arms. I moved your bag because it was in the way. If something is missing, it's because you misplace things when you're overwhelmed. There it was. The lie was already settling. Not dramatic. Not aggressive. Just reasonable enough to repeat later. Marian studied her daughter's face and realized something quietly terrifying. Evelyn believed she could say this out loud and make it true. Give it back, Marian said again. Evelyn's jaw tightened. I don't have it. Marian waited. I don't, Evelyn repeated, sharper now. And you're not going to do this today. Evelyn turned back to the counter, picked up her mug, and took a measured sip. You embarrassed me last night, she continued calmly. In front of people who matter. I won't let that happen again. Marian felt a coldness spread, not anger, not fear. Understanding. "You're not worried about what you did," Marian said. "You're worried about being seen." Evelyn didn't look at her. "I'm worried about stability." "No," Marian corrected. "You're worried about control." Evelyn set her mug down hard enough to spill a little coffee onto the counter. "You don't understand what I've built," she said. Marian stepped closer. "Then explain it to me." Evelyn laughed a short, humorless sound. "You wouldn't get it." The dismissal was instinctive, automatic. And it was the moment Marian understood the confrontation would not be emotional. It would be strategic. Jonah arrived just after 10. He didn't knock. He never did. He walked in, took one look at Marian's face, then at Evelyn's posture, tight, defensive, and swore under his breath. "What happened after I left?" he asked. Evelyn straightened. Nothing happened. Jonah turned to Marian. "You okay?" Marian nodded once. "Something's missing." Jonah's gaze sharpened. "What?" "My ring. And documents." Jonah turned slowly toward Evelyn. "Did you take them?" he asked. Evelyn scoffed. "This is ridiculous." "Answer the question," Jonah said. Evelyn's eyes flashed. "I moved things. I didn't steal." Jonah stepped closer, voice low. "You don't get to decide the difference." Marian watched them, feeling oddly detached, as if she were observing a version of her life from a safe distance. "What documents?" Jonah asked. Marian hesitated just long enough for Evelyn to notice. "Nothing important," Evelyn said quickly. "Old papers. Stuff she doesn't even look at." Jonah's eyes flicked back to Marian. "Margot?" "They had my signature," Marian said. "On things I didn't sign." The room went still. Jonah stared at Evelyn. Evelyn's expression changed, not guilt, not shame. Calculation. "You're jumping to conclusions," she said. "You always do this. Turn confusion into catastrophe." Jonah shook his head slowly. "You forged her name?" Evelyn's voice hardened. "I optimized access." The euphemism hung in the air, like poison. Jonah laughed once, sharp. "That's fraud." Evelyn snapped her gaze to him. "You don't know what you're talking about." "I know exactly what I'm talking about," Jonah replied. "And so do you." Marian felt something settle into place. This wasn't just personal. This was criminal. Marian did not call the police. Not yet. That restraint would later be the thing that saved her. Instead, she went to the bank. Alone. She sat in a glass-walled office across from a woman named Claire who spoke softly and listened carefully. Marian laid out facts without embellishment. Dates, access, names. Claire's expression changed subtly as the story unfolded. "Do you recognize these signatures?" Claire asked, turning a monitor toward her. Marian leaned forward. "They were good. Too good. But not hers." "No," Marian said. Claire nodded slowly. "Then we need to freeze access." "Do it," Marian said. That was the first real reversal. Not loud, not visible, but irreversible. By the time Marian left the bank, 3 accounts were locked, 2 authorizations revoked, and an internal review initiated. Evelyn would feel it soon. And when she did, she would move. Evelyn called that afternoon. Her voice was tight, controlled. "Why can't I access the account?" she asked. Marian sat at the kitchen table, the same place she had always absorbed conversations quietly. "Because it's mine," Marian said. "You can't just do that," Evelyn snapped. "I already did." Evelyn exhaled sharply. "You're overreacting." Marian smiled faintly. "You underestimated me." Silence. Then Evelyn shifted tactics. "You're hurting me," she said softly. "After everything I've done." Marian closed her eyes. There it was. The old lever. "You're hurting yourself," Marian replied. "I'm just no longer cushioning the fall." Evelyn's voice turned cold. "You don't know what you're interfering with." "I know enough," Marian said. "No," Evelyn said, "you don't." The line went dead. Marian set the phone down carefully. She knew what came next. Smear. Pressure. Isolation. People like Evelyn didn't escalate emotionally. They escalated socially. Within days, things shifted. A neighbor stopped by just to check in. A mutual acquaintance asked if Marion was doing okay. Someone else mentioned casually that Evelyn had been under a lot of stress lately. The narrative was spreading. Not cruel, concerned. Which was worse? Marion recognized it for what it was. Preemptive damage control. Evelyn was planting doubt before truth could arrive. And Marion understood something critical. If she waited, she would be framed. If she rushed, she would be dismissed. She needed timing and leverage, and the patience to let Evelyn reveal herself. The email arrived without warning. No subject line, no greeting, just an attachment and a single sentence in the body. You should see this before they do. It came from an address I didn't recognize. Marion opened it at the kitchen table, the house silent except for the refrigerator's low hum. She saved the attachment first habit, then opened it. A PDF, financial statements, organizational charts, a signature page. She scrolled slowly. Her name appeared 3 times. Not as a beneficiary, not as a witness, as a guarantor. Her breath shortened. She read the sentence again, slower this time. The undersigned accepts fiduciary responsibility for oversight and compliance. Undersigned. Her signature, again, terrifyingly close, sat beneath the text. Marion felt the room tilt. This wasn't just about access to her accounts. This wasn't about convenience or control. Evelyn hadn't been borrowing from her. She had been standing behind her, using her history, her credibility, her unremarkable reputation for reliability. Marion, the safe one, the invisible one, the one no one would suspect. Her phone rang. Noah. She answered without speaking. "Did you get it?" he asked. "Yes," Marion said. There was a pause. "I tried to stop it." "I know," Marion replied. And she meant it. "They listed you as oversight," Noah continued. "It made things easier. Investors relaxed when they saw your name." "I didn't know," Marion said. "I believe you," he said. Then quieter. "They won't." The words sank in. This was the midpoint, the moment the story reassembled itself into a shape she could no longer deny. The party, the humiliation, the erasure, all of it had served one purpose: to position her as present enough to be accountable, but absent enough not to interfere. A cover, indeed. The call came the next morning. A man named Peter Lawson. Calm voice, precise language. "Mrs. Caldwell," he said, "we're conducting a routine inquiry. Your name has come up in relation to a compliance review." Routine. The word was a lie people told to keep things orderly. Marion listened, answered only what was asked. Took notes. "Yes." "No. I don't recall authorizing that. I'd like everything in writing." When the call ended, her hands shook for the first time. She sat back in her chair and stared at the wall. This was no longer a family problem. This was a professional one, and she was already behind. Evelyn did not call. Instead, people around Marion did. A former colleague, a distant cousin, a neighbor she barely knew, all variations of the same concern. "Are you okay? Evelyn says you've been under a lot of stress. She's worried about you." Worried. Marion recognized the maneuver. It was elegant. By the time Marion spoke, the room would already be leaning away from her. She met Ruth that evening. Ruth listened, then nodded once. "She's framing instability." Marion swallowed. "Will it work?" Ruth didn't lie. "If you panic, yes." Marion exhaled slowly. "Then I won't." Ruth studied her. "You understand, this will cost you something." Marion nodded. "It already has." 2 days passed without word from Evelyn. That was worse than confrontation. Silence gave her room to work. On the 3rd day, Marion received a formal notice. Temporary restriction pending clarification of fiduciary role. Her access to certain funds was limited. Not frozen yet, but monitored. She stood at the window, watching rain streak down the glass. For the first time, doubt crept in. What if they believe her? What if my calm looks like guilt? The temptation to explain, to defend herself loudly, rose like pressure in her chest. She picked up her phone, then set it down. She remembered something Ruth had said. People who manipulate rely on reaction. Take that away, and they collapse under their own weight. That night, Marian didn't sleep. She sat at the table with documents spread around her, the clock ticking forward with indifferent persistence. At 3:17 a.m., she reached the moment she would later recognize as the lowest point. The thought arrived fully formed, uninvited. If I stay quiet, I might lose everything. If I speak now, I might lose myself. She pressed her palms flat against the table. For a long time, she did nothing. Then, very deliberately, she organized the documents into a single folder. She labeled it with the date, and beneath it, a second folder, Evidence Primary. She wasn't ready to use it, but she was done pretending she didn't have it. At dawn, Marian sent one email. Not to Evelyn, not to Noah, not to friends or family, to the compliance office. 3 sentences, precise, factual. I am aware my name has been used without my authorization. I am prepared to cooperate fully. Please direct all further communication through my legal representative. She CC'd Ruth. Then she turned off her phone. And for the first time since the party, the weight in her chest eased, not because things were resolved, but because she had stopped absorbing impact without direction. This was no longer about defending herself. It was about letting the truth surface in its own time. Evelyn resurfaced publicly before she did privately. That was deliberate. Marian learned this not from a call or a message, but from a link Jonah sent without commentary. A single line beneath it. She's moving. The link opened to a carefully worded announcement on a foundation website, Evelyn's Foundation. The language was gentle, responsible, forward-looking. A pause in operations, a restructuring, a commitment to transparency, and then, nestled between paragraphs like a carefully placed splinter, recent internal reviews have identified administrative confusion stemming from legacy oversight structures. Legacy oversight. Marian's name did not appear. It didn't have to. The implication was clean enough that anyone who knew how to read these things would understand exactly where the confusion was meant to live. Marian closed the page and sat back. This was Evelyn's most dangerous skill, not aggression, not deceit, but plausible virtue. She did not accuse. She suggested. She did not attack. She expressed concern. By the time Marian spoke, she would already be stepping into a story that had been gently pre-written around her. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She let it go to voicemail. The message came seconds later. A woman's voice. Professional. Warm. Mrs. Caldwell, this is Dana Shu from the Heart Foundation. We're hoping to clarify a few items regarding historical oversight. Nothing urgent. We just want to make sure everyone feels comfortable. Comfortable. Marian deleted the voicemail. Then she called Ruth. They're isolating me, Marian said. Yes, Ruth replied. And they're testing whether you'll try to reinsert yourself emotionally. I won't, Marian said. Ruth paused. Good, because the next thing she'll try is to make you look cruel. The letter arrived by courier. Cream envelope. Thick paper. Legal weight. Marian didn't open it immediately. She placed it on the table and made tea she did not drink. When she finally slit the envelope, the words landed with methodical force. Notice of temporary removal from advisory capacity. Advisory capacity. A role she had never actively performed, but one that had been assigned to her quietly useful when needed, invisible when inconvenient. The letter was polite, regretful, firm, until matters are clarified. Marian folded the paper and stared at it. This was the loss she hadn't prepared for. Not money, not reputation, but standing. The quiet assumption, held by people who had never really known her, that she was steady, reliable, above suspicion. That assumption was gone. Not destroyed. Suspended. She felt it like a physical thing leaving her body. Jonah arrived an hour later. He read the letter once, then again. They can't just, he started. They can, Marian said. They did. Jonah looked up. You want me to call her? Marian shook her head. No, that's what she wants. Jonah paced the room, anger radiating off him. She's painting you as the problem. Marian nodded. She's painting me as past. That was the more precise cruelty. You don't have to vilify someone to remove them. You just have to suggest they belong to a previous version of the story. Jonah stopped pacing. What are you going to do? Marian thought of the folders, the timestamps, the exported footage she hadn't told him about yet. I'm going to let her keep talking, Marian said. She hasn't finished. Evelyn called that night. Not angry. Not defensive. Soft. Mom, she said, voice low and intimate. We need to talk. Marian stood at the sink, watching water run over clean plates. We already are. Evelyn exhaled, as if exhausted. I'm trying to protect you. Marian turned off the tap. From what? From yourself, Evelyn said gently. This resistance, it doesn't look good. There it was. The frame tightening. I'm cooperating fully, Marian replied. With investigators, Evelyn said, not with me. Marian waited. You could make this easier, Evelyn continued. For everyone. If you acknowledged some confusion, some lapse. A lapse in what? Marian asked. Evelyn hesitated, then chose her words carefully. Oversight. The same word again. Marian smiled faintly. You want me to take responsibility for decisions I didn't make. I want you to show goodwill, Evelyn said. People understand mistakes. They don't understand hostility. Hostility, Marian repeated. Yes, Evelyn said. This coldness, it's not like you. Marian leaned against the counter. What would be like me? Evelyn didn't answer immediately. Then, quietly, standing by me. The sentence landed with the full weight of childhood expectation. Marian closed her eyes. I stood by you, she said. You stood on me. Evelyn's voice sharpened. That's unfair. So is what you're doing, Marian replied. Evelyn sighed. If this continues, I can't shield you. Marian opened her eyes. From what? From consequences, Evelyn said. They'll look for someone to blame. They already are, Marian said. And it isn't me. Silence stretched. Then Evelyn spoke again, her voice different now, harder. If you don't help me, she said, you'll lose access to the family trust. There it was, the final lever. Marian felt the familiar tug, the instinct to stabilize, to sacrifice something of herself to keep the structure intact. She let the silence answer first. Then she said, evenly, you don't control the trust. I will, Evelyn snapped. Once this is over. Marian smiled, small and sad. You won't. Evelyn laughed a brittle sound. You think you're winning? No, Marian said. I think you're rushing. The line went dead. 2 days later, Ruth called. They found the mismatch, she said. Marian's breath caught. Where? Metadata, Ruth replied. Timestamps don't align with your travel records. And the signatures, someone tried too hard. Marian closed her eyes. That means, she began. It means the story can't hold, Ruth finished. Not without you lying, and you're not. Marian felt something lift. Not relief, not victory. Gravity. The kind that pulls truth downward until it settles. Be ready, Ruth added. When it breaks, it won't be gentle. Marian thought of Evelyn's smile at the party. The way she had said helpful. The locked door upstairs. The missing ring. I'm ready, Marian said. She hung up and walked to the window. Outside, the street looked ordinary. Children passed on bikes. A neighbor watered plants. Life continuing. Inside, Marian opened the folder labeled Evidence Primary. She added one more item. A note to herself, typed cleanly, without emotion. I did not consent. I did not authorize. I did not know. Then she closed the folder. The confrontation was no longer a possibility. It was a schedule. The call came at 9:12 a.m. Not early enough to feel urgent. Not late enough to be avoided. Marian was at the dining table, papers aligned in neat stacks, the house quiet in that way. It only became when she had already accepted that something final was approaching. "Mrs. Caldwell," the voice said, "this is Peter Lawson again." "Yes," Marian replied. "We've completed a preliminary reconciliation," he continued. "There are quiet inconsistencies we'd like to clarify." "Quiet. That word again." "Go on," Marian said. "The authorizations attributed to you were executed on dates when records show you were not present. In one case, not even in the same city." Marian closed her eyes. "We also reviewed the digital signatures," Lawson continued. "They appear assisted." Assisted. The euphemism returned, stripped of its usefulness. "And?" Marian asked. "And," Lawson said carefully now, "we no longer believe you were the originator of these actions." Marian felt her shoulders lower slightly. Not relief. Recognition. "What happens next?" she asked. "There will be a formal reassignment of responsibility," Lawson said, "and certain parties will be required to respond." "Certain parties?" Lawson paused. "I want to be clear. This will become visible." Marian nodded once, though he couldn't see her. "I understand." When the call ended, she did not cry. She stood, rinsed her cup, and dried it slowly. Habit mattered. It reminded her she still existed inside herself. Then she called Ruth. "It's moving," Marian said. "Yes," Ruth replied. "And it's no longer yours to carry." The board meeting was closed door. No press. No announcements. Just a recalibration. Evelyn attended believing she would manage it the way she managed everything else. With poise, with language, with selective truth. She did not expect documentation. She did not expect timestamps. She did not expect Marian's absence to speak louder than her presence ever had. By the time Evelyn realized she was not steering the conversation, it was already past the point where charm could recover ground. She called Marian afterward. Not angry, panicked. "They're confused," Evelyn said. "They don't understand how these things work." Marian listened. "I need you," Evelyn continued, "just to explain how things got muddled." Marian closed her eyes. "No," she said. Evelyn's breath caught. "You're really doing this." "I'm letting it happen," Marian replied. "There's a difference." Evelyn's voice sharpened. "You're my mother." Marian's voice stayed steady. "I was—" Silence. Then Evelyn said the thing she had never said before. "I didn't think you'd survive without me." Marian felt that land not as an insult, but as confession. "I already have," Marian replied. The line went dead. The trust was frozen. Not seized. Not dissolved. Reviewed. That alone was enough. Donors withdrew quietly. Partnerships paused indefinitely. Emails stopped being returned. Evelyn moved out of the apartment she'd curated for visibility and into a smaller place no one had photographed. The world did not punish her loudly. It simply stopped rewarding her. Noah came by one afternoon. He looked older. "She keeps saying you betrayed her," he said. Marian poured tea and handed him a cup. "I refuse to lie." Noah nodded slowly. "She doesn't see the difference." Marian smiled faintly. "She never needed to." Noah looked up. "Do you regret it?" Marian considered the question honestly. "No," she said. "I regret waiting." They met one last time. Not planned. Not staged. Evelyn came to the house without calling. She looked smaller. Still composed, but stripped of performance. "I lost everything," she said. Marian stood across from her in the living room, the same room where she had once carried trays while strangers smiled past her. "No," Marian said. "You lost control." Evelyn's eyes filled, but her voice stayed sharp. "You could have stopped this." Marian nodded. I know. Evelyn stared at her. Why didn't you? Marian did not answer immediately. Then, because loving you was no longer a reason to disappear. Evelyn laughed bitterly. So, this is about a party? Marian shook her head. It was never about the party. Evelyn's voice dropped. You ruined me. Marian stepped closer, just enough to close the space. No, she said quietly. I stepped out of your way. That was the moment Evelyn understood. Not forgiveness. Not reconciliation. Finality. She left without another word. 2 months later, Marian returned to the river venue. There was no event. No audience. Just water moving past glass, indifferent and clean. She stood where she had once been mistaken for staff and felt no urge to correct anyone anymore. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. I'm sorry. No signature. Marian did not reply. She didn't need to. Back home, Marian removed the bracelet she'd worn to the party and placed it in a drawer. She made dinner for one, ate slowly, cleaned up. The house was quiet again. But this time, it wasn't listening. It was resting. And for the first time in a long while, so was she. Thank you for watching. Your trust, your time, and your support truly mean everything. If this video brought you value, please like, share, and subscribe. It helps this channel reach those who need it most. Stay focused, keep growing, and I'll see you in the next video.